You're listening to episode 179 of the Tennis Files podcast on the top takeaways from the podcast in 2020. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Tennis Files podcast. My name is Mehrban, a former Division I college tennis player, and on the show I interview the world's top pros, coaches, and experts to help you improve your tennis game. And today I am recapping 2020, and the way I'm doing this is I took a look at my stats of the most downloaded episodes of 2020, and I went through each of them and picked out what I found to be some of the best information in that episode. And so I have for you 7 different clips that I have deemed the best of 2020 and that you have also deemed based on the number of downloads at least. So we have at least some form of metric that we can use here. And I think you're going to enjoy this variation. You know, we've got everyone from former top ATP players to top coaches, and we've got myself in here as well, talking a bit here. So I think you'll enjoy it. And as far as the content, we're going to cover such themes as how to serve and volley like a pro, how to play more aggressive tennis, the most critical single strategies and tactics. Got how to develop your mental toughness. We've got single strategy. So we've got a lot of great things in store for you. Some stuff on technique as well. And I really do hope you enjoy this collation, if that's the word, of the episodes that were really especially fantastic this year and that I've put together for you just to recap 2020. Felt like, obviously, with this being the last episode of the year, that it would be appropriate to make this the episode. So without further ado, we'll get into the first episode. And this episode features former ATP pro Taylor Dent, who achieved a career high ranking of number 21 in the world on the ATP Tour, and he won 4 singles titles, as well as many other numerous accolades. So I hope you enjoy this first clip with Taylor Dent.
It's funny, I actually watched 2 matches of yours on YouTube today, and I ended up watching 4 tiebreaks, which isn't really surprising considering your game. But I was watching you play against Pete in Cincy in 2000, and then against Andy Murray in 2005 at the same tournament. But I mean, do you have a lot of flashbacks, like to those matches when you're actually watching other pro tennis matches on TV?
Yeah, I'm pretty bad at it. I've talked to some other tennis players like Agassi, can just bring back memories and recall every match he's played and a lot of points he's played. For me, some matches stand out for one reason or another, either because they were significantly good or significantly bad. But overall in my career, people tell me I've played this person so many times. I'm like, no, that doesn't sound right. And then we look it up online, and it is true. So I'm not super in tune with my tennis past match by match, but there are some certain highlights that I do remember and recall, and some certain lowlights that I do as well, unfortunately.
Well, if I ask you about a match you don't remember, you just feel free to make it up, to your benefit. It's no problem. No problem.
Exactly. There you go.
Yeah, sweet. But, Taylor, I was just obviously doing some research on you, and it's really incredible the amount of sports in your family. Your mom, dad, half brother, godfather all played tennis, very high levels, and your cousins, extremely famous volleyball player, Misty May trainer. So, do you think having an athletic family gave you an advantage or a head start, versus somebody who might not be have a family like as entrenched in pro sports?
Yeah, I think the advantages played out like this is, the memories I have with my older brother, with my father, even with my cousin, is we're always playing games. You know what I mean? We're outside all the time messing around, and if there's a ball, if there's a frisbee, if there's anything around, we'll figure out a game to play. So the competitive nature, it was always there, and just the amount of time we spent outside messing around. It does add up. And, I have 4 kids of my own, and the 2 older ones are boys, and they're outside playing a lot. And you can just see they pick up a lot of things naturally. We kind of force them to be outside, and they enjoy it, and they compete against each other. And then when they go play golf or they go play tennis or some of these other sports, they just have a good athletic awareness. So yeah, in a sense, for sure, I think genetics, was a help to me, but also just the culture of being around so many competitive people was also a huge help.
Yeah, just a lot of great things there. A lot of people to look up to, and also, like you mentioned, just a lot of competing in different types of sports, developing that competitive nature. It's a huge characteristic of great players like yourself. And you mentioned, that there are a lot of sports that you have your kids play, and also you were exposed to. I mean, was there any particular sport or sports that you think actually, when you look at that sport or sports, like they really actually helped you with your tennis in some sort of aspect?
Again, I never really stuck to anything. When I was young, I did everything that there was. If something was fun, I would go after it really hard. And then, 6 months later, 9 months later, I'd get bored with it and do something else. So for me, saying that there was one for me personally, I would say no, but I do say this, coaching as many kids as I've coached now since I've been retired, it's actually staggering to me how well soccer players can pick up tennis. That surprised me, because obviously soccer players are not allowed to use their hands. They don't hit things with their hands and don't have to time that. But their body awareness, their movement on the court, their spacing on the court is really, really good. And if I have someone that struggles with that, in the past I've taken them out and I've done soccer drills with them and just kind of encourage them to get into that, because it's amazing how quickly soccer players pick up tennis.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. They have to have great balance, and their footwork is on point. That's great stuff there, Taylor. And as far as your training environment when you were a junior, people have different upbringings. I was wondering, did you do mostly academies or private clubs, or just a lot of like arranged practices, or how was that like for you most of the time?
For me specifically, my father was a coach. So when I was, starting to play tennis, he was at the club all day working. So I would, get off of school, and whether I was playing or not, I was hanging out at the tennis club. So I'd be, hitting balls on a wall, on a backboard. If nobody was there to hit with, if there was people to hit with, I'd be playing, points all day. Once I got older and a little bit better, my dad ran an after school program, and I did that every day. I don't think there's a right and a wrong as far as like what you talk about successful people. Pete Sampras, he played up, and lost all the time in the juniors, and not many people can do that. And then you have someone like Jack Sock, he won all the time in the juniors. And you have Serena Williams and Venus Williams. They just didn't play many tournaments. They trained with each other. I don't think there's a right or a wrong way to kind of go about it. It's whatever works for you. But I do think the mindset is similar. Pete was going out there and he was playing to get better. He was playing with the goal of professional tennis, same as the Williams sisters, kind of same as Jack Sock. So I feel that mindset is a really, really big deal, and that's what I try to impress on the kids that I work with. No drill is perfect and is going to be the magic fix. No match, no set of circumstances is going to be the magic fix. It's your mindset. What are you doing out here? Are you out here to have fun and mess around? And that's fine, but you just have to take what comes with that. Or are you out here to pursue, some really, really big things in tennis, and that should reflect how you behave on the court and how you train.
That's right, Taylor. And I remember actually, related to what you said, I read on the Dent Academy's website, and it said that winning matches at the junior level does not predict future success. And so I was kind of wondering if maybe you could expound upon that, because that's a really important point, I think, for everybody to hear.
Well, yeah, and it's complicated, but, we'll just give you like kind of broad strokes. Number one, when you're 10, 12, 14, even 16 years old, the problem is you don't play against that type of opponent forever. Your opponent changes and gets better and stronger and older, more mature, more skilled as you do the same thing. So it's not a stagnant opponent. When you're playing 12 and under tennis, that opponent across the court is going to change so much. Whereas if you kind of relate that to basketball, the hoop's not going to change. Obviously, the defenders will. If you relate it to golf, you could play a golf course 20 years ago, go back, and play it today, and it's going to be roughly the same course, the exact same course. So you kind of have to keep that in mind. And that's why, at younger ages, typically the more consistent players win. And I should say the safer players win. And why that works is, when you're young, you don't have the skill to open up the court, get this, take that safe ball that opponent has hit an angle or hit them off the court, come in and finish a volley off at net. That just doesn't happen at younger ages very often. And if some player can do that, can they do it for a 2 out of 3 set match? Probably not at a young age. And so that's why typically safer players win when you're younger and kind of, coming up in lower levels. But, fast forward, it starts to transition, and it's not really safe to play safe anymore. Because if you put a ball in the middle of the court against somebody in the top 200 in men's tennis or women's tennis, you're done. That ball's not coming back. You're not going to get that ball back. So what is safe when you're 14 and under or 12 and under or whatever, and even 16 under, is no longer safe when you are 18, 20, 22 and trying to play high-level college tennis and high-level professional tennis.
Yeah, such a great point. Taylor, appreciate that. I mean, I'm living proof of that. I played in juniors and I had my best years probably in the 16s. And then, after that, the players who I used to beat by just grinding them out, they'd have these weapons and it was really tough to beat them. So I appreciate that. Another point that you made a few minutes ago was about it really depends on the player, whether it's better for them to play up constantly like Pete or like Jack, like win everything in your age group. I was wondering if maybe there's any way to decipher which path to follow depending on what type of player.
I mean, it's a trial and error. And you know what? The people who know the player best, that they're the player's full-time coach, the parents, they know what situation is going to be the healthiest for them. I mean, I find it hard when some parents come and say, my child is starting to do better, we should play them up. And it's like, well, they're, do it for the right reasons. If you're doing it because you're running out of competition, and then that's fine. I get it. You know what I mean? If you're doing it to avoid having to play the tough matches, because in my opinion, my dad's opinion and Jenny's opinion, the toughest matches to play are the ones you're supposed to win. It's not the matches where, I've got nothing to lose, this player's better than me, I'm just going to – that's an easy match to play. And you don't want to get good at playing easy matches. You want to get good at playing those tough, nitty-gritty matches to where it tests your mental stamina out there, because that's a big part of it. And so I think no matter what you do as a young tennis player, as a parent, as a coach, it has to be calculated. There has to be a good reason. You know what I mean? It's just like, I can relate that to a match. So, I was working with, we as a team were working with Jared Donaldson for a while. And a young American player, he's had some injuries. He should be hopefully back soon. But he played a match. I was with him down in Miami, and he played Malik Jaziri, Tunisian guy, really, really good player. I think the guy's a fantastic player. He's got for the tour level, I think an A- serve and an A- forehand, and that's comparing it to, Federer and those guys. His backhand's really rough. He slices a lot of backhands, and it's kind of easy to pick at. It's easy to get at. So I'm like, Jared, you got a really good chance here. Just the game plan is just pound it into this guy's backhand, and you're not gonna get hurt. He's just gonna rally at the very least. And then as soon as he hangs one, you can go wherever you want. Just get him off the court and then start being productive in the point that way, right? So I'm thinking, here we go, we got this. This is gonna be a big win for Jared. And Jared goes out, and the match doesn't look very good for the first half of the first set, and then all of a sudden Jared's playing this guy's forehand for the rest of the match. And I'm like flabbergasted. I can't even fathom it. And this guy is hitting great forehands everywhere. The points Jared is winning, they're like highlight points, where Jared's running alley to alley, and just somehow hitting some miraculous shots. And so anyway, Jared ends up playing the best match I had seen him play up to that level. And he ends up winning in a breaker in the third set. And, I'm happy, but inside I'm furious. I'm honestly really upset. Like, what happened to the game plan? So me as a player, me as a person, I always like to kind of hear the other side of the story first. But inside, I'm upset. I'm ready to, blow a fuse, right? So I go, what happened to the game plan? And he said, well, I tried hitting to his backhand, but I just didn't like the way the points were going. And his forehand was better for sure, but I liked that ball. I liked the way the points were going from there, and I just felt like I had a better chance to win this match playing his forehand rather than his backhand. And, it kind of stunned me. I'm like, you know what? I can't get upset. He had a reason. I don't agree with it. You know what I mean? And that's frustrating for me. But at least he had a legit, thought-out reason for doing something. And so I think that lesson can be translated to your development. Have a legitimate, thought-out reason for whatever it is that you're doing. You know what I mean? And it can't be some emotional knee-jerk thing because, you see drop shots work in 12 and under tennis. Well, how many drop shots do good players hit, at high-level tennis? I mean, they're hitting, 1 or 2 a match, 3 a match maybe. So I just feel like whatever you do, it's got to be thought out, right, and you have to have a purpose.
Yeah, 100%, Taylor. But so what does it take, because sometimes juniors, obviously, they're not, I don't know if, maybe they're not developed mentally enough or they don't have like the coaching for it. I mean, what does it take to get these junior players to really think more out there?
I think as far as thinking more, I don't know. We have a parent at the academy, and he started reading, I think it's called The Inner Game of Tennis. Mm-hmm. That's what I think the book is.
It is, yeah.
And so he was asking me about something, and this topic came up, and I said, I think, me personally, the worst thing you can do is overcoach a player. That is the worst thing you can do, because what do? You shut down their brain, you shut down their thought process, and you basically try to make them a robot. Again, they're not golfers. You can't just talk to them, for 5 minutes in between each shot. I mean, they have to play this match on their own out there. And even if you were a coach on the court, like Davis Cup, they still have to play the games. The 2 games and then come off. Then but it just doesn't exist in tennis. Too much is happening too fast. So I feel like letting the players fail, letting them see what works, experiment what doesn't work, and kind of giving them their own identity, and then wrapping it as you coach them. You wrap it in them discovering for themselves what's working and what's not working, and why is that? Why isn't it? And then you get a player who's a gamer out there. You get a player who can kind of think on the fly and feel it. And again, people have strengths. For some, that comes naturally, and for some, that's something they have to work on. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I love that passion. I mean, great advice, and also I can really feel, the amount of passion that you have for coaching, and it's just wonderful to see, a great player and person like you continue to give back to the game.
All right, hope you enjoyed that one. And by the way, you can check out the full interview with Taylor at tennisfiles.com/128 for episode 128 of the Tennis Files podcast. All right, now this next clip is with Emilio Sanchez, who is another former amazing player who achieved career high rankings of number 7 in the world in singles and number 1 in doubles in 1989. And he's won 3 Grand Slam doubles titles and a silver medal in the 1988 Olympic Games. He also won 15 singles titles in total and 50 doubles titles and made over $5 million in prize money. Not too shabby. And without further ado, here's my clip of my interview with Emilio Sanchez.
So I was wondering, Emilio, to kind of step back and into the beginning parts of your life. At what point in your life did you actually feel that you wanted to become a professional tennis player?
Well, actually, it was very special because I didn't have much option. At some moment, I was not doing so well, and I was not growing. So I was 16 years old, and I was not growing. And but suddenly one summer, I grow, and I start to beat people that I have never beat before. And from the summer when I was turning 16 until the summer I was turning 18, in only 2 years, my tennis went from nowhere to start to do well. And my transition from junior to professional, it was super fast because I played a couple satellites that they used to play at the time, and then I played a couple of these big events. At the time was the Grand Prix, and I qualify and I make the semis and I win enough points to make the next tournament a special exam. So almost in the first semester of the year, I was 16 the world, and I got in the French Open. So I almost had no choice because I didn't have time to doubt what to do or not to do. Like I rocket to the top 100, and then once you are there, obviously you become like kind of like a pro. So it was not. It was not an option. So I was very lucky. I didn't have to play almost any qualies. And today that's impossible. Nowadays, you really need to be there for 3-4 years before you even if you are super gifted junior. Normally, it takes so much longer to arrive up there.
Yeah, for sure, Emilio. And I kind of want to dissect a little bit. At least you talk about from 16 to 18, you started beating people that you didn't before, and you did talk about a growth spurt. But I mean, was it just the growth spurt, or what was it in your game that maybe you changed, or something that happened maybe mentally that allowed you to just all of a sudden, rocket up to the rankings?
Well, I think that the fundamentals are there, depending on what is your background and with who you learn and what they taught you. So I suppose that I had good fundamentals or good technique. And tactic, I start to order it better, so that the tactic I start to know what to do in the matches better as you mature. So those two pillars, they go very much together, the technical and the tactical. But without the physical, there is no mental. So the physical pillar, when I grow and I become strong, allow me to have the quality and the intensity and the passion, because I started to love something that before, when I was losing and so, I didn't love to. No one likes to lose, and no one likes to be there practicing and losing, because it's no fun. So what is fun is to compete and win. If you compete and lose, it's no good business for anybody. So when I put together this physical pillar and then the mental pillar start to become stronger, and then you can work your tactics and you can use your tools, your technique much easier, and that helped me a lot to challenge the rest of the people and to go much faster on the rankings.
Great stuff, Emilio. And when you talk about the strategy, that's obviously one big piece of the whole puzzle. How did you approach learning the strategy? I mean, did you study it, or was it just a matter of your coach said, okay, we're going to do this strategy, and then you just absorbed it in your brain and then it became automatic? Or what was your process for learning strategy?
Well, no, the key for me is that there is something that allows you to compete, that there is something that you do really well. So has to be or the serve or the serve and volley or the forehand, or normally the serve and the forehand are almost a must for everybody today. So everybody has to have a serve and a forehand. So, but how you do the forehand? You do it cross court, inside out. You do top spin, flat, inside the court, outside. So there's many variables on every one of the shots. That is what is going to give you the chances to be able to be competitive and to win those matches. No, so I always say that you have some gifts, some tools that they're going to give you the matches, and then the other tools you have to compensate them. They are not as good, but they cannot be super weak. They have to be almost at the same level. That you cannot have something that the opponent finds that damages your equation. So it's very important to compensate the weaknesses and to use a lot the strengths. And that if you see the great players, yesterday Djokovic was playing and Shapovalov was playing amazing. Mm-hmm. But at the end, what Djokovic came out with the win because he was doing what he does well. The returns, the playing deep, the moving the opponent. So that's how he ended up winning a match that he had lost. No, so I think that's really, really important. And the tennis players become experts of excelling with their strengths and not having very strong weaknesses.
All right, great.
And you have to be a very complete player.
For sure, especially in the pro game. So Emilio, I mean, you talk about obviously trying to play your strengths as much as possible in the points, and then maybe your weaknesses, at least improving them so that they're not being destroyed by your opponent. But can you kind of talk about like maybe an example or how to set up the points so that you can actually like utilize your strengths more and then like minimize your weaknesses?
Well, in today tennis at super high level, The boys normally in the top 100 they winning over 70% of serves. So the ones that they save normal, they win 75 or something. The general population, they win more than 80% of the serves. And the super servers like Isner or Karlovic or Federer, they win over 90% of serves. But a guy like Nadal wins 90% of his serves. So that means that the serve becomes so important because it's how you initiate the game. And then there is the next three shots that they are so key to be able to keep the initiative. So the serve gives you the initiative. And if you are capable with your strength, so if you have good forehands to use it after the serve, you're going to increase the amount of serve games that you're going to win. So if you increase the number of serves, and then you are more in the safe area, because if you win 90% of serves, if you are a good returner and break a lot of serves, and then you are going to be in pretty good shape. If you don't break so much, and then you have a problem. It's like Karlovic serves very well, but breaks very little. So his matches are always very level. So there, if he loses one game of his serve, and then it's almost for sure that he's going to lose the set, no? But the best players are always the ones that they manage to take away the initiative from the server. So you have the best returner in the world, everybody says is Djokovic today. No, but the one who makes more breaks is Nadal. So maybe Djokovic has better first return, but Nadal has the follow-up after the return is better because he breaks about 35% of games. So imagine Nadal every 3 games that you serve, he's going to break you one. How safe he is with his serve? So he's very comfortable. But because he wins 90%, so that's why he's so strong. Because on top of winning his serve, he's very strong in breaking serves. Mm-hmm. The second one in breaking serves is normally Djokovic. And for example, who plays a bit more on the edge is Federer, because Federer breaks about 25%. So when they match up together, so if Nadal breaks 35 and Djokovic and Federer breaks 25, so 10% at that level is a lot. And the serve is almost the same, even if Federer maybe is 92, 93% of win serve and Nadal 90%. So there is the matchup between the two. So at the end, if you are able to take away the initiative and use your strengths with the serve of the other one, and then that's when you're going to have very good chances of breaking.
Great stuff, Emilio. And so let's say maybe step in the amateur's shoes. I know you work with a lot of high-level players, but what are maybe some basic return strategies or tips that can help us increase our chances of breaking our opponents?
Well, any level is the same. The only thing is that at an amateur level, you're going to go down, and with let's say a club player who wins 60% of serves is going to be very strong player.
Yeah.
But because the other one is also going to be lower than that. So that means that if he's lower than that you're going to make a lot of breaks. So at the end is always a equation of the points that you manage to win with the mistakes of the other one. So if you are returning at club level, my advice will be always to find a return that is very safe, but it has a lot of length. Okay. So in club level, you tend to play a lot of balls in the middle of the court. What I will try to find is to see if you have kind of a return that you can play a bit deeper. And if you play a bit deeper, the other one is going to have to go more far. So that means that then you're going to be able to step in. And then you're going to be kind of like dancing. If you are able to return deep, you have a big chance that to be able to play with your strengths after, whatever are. Like if it's the slice or the forehand or whatever it is. So that's really important. To be able to return deep is very important to see the line of the ball of the serve and the height of the ball and the speed. So you can, many times at club level, the problem that they have is that they try to make the same shot independently of the speed of the ball and the height of the ball that they're going to hit it. And then suddenly they say, why this ball goes to the fence and the other one goes to the net? Is because you are not watching well the ball of the opponent. And that anticipation don't start with the opponent, it starts with your own shot. If you play deep, there is a big chance that the shot from the opponent is going to be short. and then you are going to be more comfortable. It can be long also. It can be deep as well, but there is a lot of chances that is not deep.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the best basic strategies is hitting the deep ball and yielding the short ball. And that reminds me, Emilio, I saw a video, maybe 45 minutes long or so, of a presentation you gave. And I know there was a part of it where you had two juniors playing, or actually most of it. And then I think you were criticizing one of the juniors because they weren't moving forward. You know, when they had like a short ball, the footwork wasn't there. They're just waiting there with the open stance for the ball. Yeah. So I was wondering, you know, that's basically the next shot if you hit a good return. Can you talk about some keys to the footwork and the importance of moving forward on these shots instead of just waiting?
Well, that's one of the things today. The pro players play so fast and so deep that they have very few chances to move to the ball because they play at super high level. So they're gonna play very, very few short balls. Okay, so but they're gonna do it. So the thing that the people don't see is that because if, I don't know, whoever they like, Shapovalov or Djokovic or Thiem or whatever, they play so many times back and waiting for the ball, it's not because they want to wait, it's because of the length of the ball of the opponent. So at the moment that the opponent leaves a short ball, they're going to move to the ball because they want to beat the ball. So, but when you don't train properly and you always waiting for the ball, when there is a short ball, and then you almost don't arrive to the ball. And that it goes with the very fast surfaces or with this training at super high speeds, you know. So, and that's one of the reasons why the players have difficulties in moving towards the ball. And when they start to improve that, and then they become way much better players. And it's something like maybe today you cannot move towards the ball more than 15% or 20% of the time, because most of the balls you're gonna have to wait for the ball or go away from the ball. But since there is big results only waiting for the ball and waiting for the ball, no one has the need to go to the ball. So that's why many people today are not capable of arriving to volley, because they don't see that opportunity, that 15% of opportunities, they don't see it and they don't walk to the ball, and then the net is much far away, so they cannot volley. Instead, who are the best players in the world are the ones who walk better to the ball. They're the ones that inside the court, they open better the court. They are more initiative and they open better the court. And are those players which are capable of playing very well, waiting for the ball and stepping on the back foot and or even on the front waiting. But when the ball is short, they open the court and they step in and they arrive to the net. And if you take Nadal now, if you take Federer, if you take the best players are the ones that they step better and they push more the opponent because they want to have the control of the center of the court. And that's, I think, one of the lacks that we have in the tennis today. In our time, we could walk to the ball more because we were not playing so deep as today. But you have to adapt to the times and try to find the best possible player that you are. You know, you try to step into the ball.
For sure, Emilio. And I mean, how do you like to train that? I mean, is it more like feeding short balls and just instructing the player, or like what's your approach to getting mentally and also strategically the player to get to do this more?
Well, the thing is that the player has to be convinced that every opportunity that he has to take the ball more inside the court, they have to try to do it and just stepping more towards the ball. And it has to be like a commitment. You still can play not doing so, and you can still win not doing so. But you're going to become much better player, because what we want is that when I wanted as a player was to become the best player I was able to become. And what I want today as a coach is that my students have the maximum tools that they can have to be able to compete better. So, but if they never enter the court, they will never volley. And if they never volley, they never develop that part of the game. So that's something that is a requirement. It takes work. It takes commitment, effort from the player. because it's easier waiting and hitting the ball and destroying the ball. But I think that that's a kind of player that is not building the game. I like the players that they build the game. And the transition that Nadal has done in the last 2-3 years is because before he was waiting for the forehand so far and playing from so far. When they start to open the court from him, he realizes that he had no chance. So he had to make this incredible transition of, instead of waiting for the ball from the back foot, now he's stepping on the front foot and he's much more aggressive and he arrives more to volley and he's playing much better inside the court. Shapovalov is doing the same. Before, he was waiting, turning every shot with the open stand and he was not doing nothing. Now that he's stepping on the ball, yesterday he didn't win because the other one was very fortunate, but he played better in some parts of the match. He played much better than Djokovic. So this year, Shapovalov if he continues this way, has a big chance to do much more damage than before because he's now stepping much better inside the court.
Awesome stuff from Emilio Sanchez, and you can check that full episode out at tennisfiles.com/129. That was obviously episode 129 of the Tennis Files podcast. All right, next up we have Rick Macci, and Rick Macci is a legendary coach. He has just really guided so many world number ones to the top of the game, including Venus and Serena Williams, Jennifer Capriati, Andy Roddick, and Maria Sharapova. And his players have won something like 250 USTA national championships since 1985. And Rick is the founder of Rick Macci Tennis Academy. So I really enjoyed speaking with him, actually multiple times at this point, which is truly an honor. And the full interview for this one is at tennisfiles.com/143. That's episode 143 of the podcast. So without further ado, here is a clip of my interview with legendary coach Rick Macci.
Gotcha, Rick. So in those situations where we're playing really consistent players, I mean, I guess in a lot of cases too, we may not be as good as that player at being consistent. So then is that a matter of you got to go and practice that out on the court of being consistent and hitting all those balls in practice so that you can eventually beat that type of player then?
Yeah, but the one thing I want to add to all this, the one thing you do got control over, and that's what I obviously tell everybody I coach, whether the kid wins the Orange Bowl or it's a 12-year-old who just wants to see how good they can be. The only thing you got control over is attitude, your attitude. And you're going to be tested. And everybody has a breaking point. And you got this ideal performance state where everybody goes off a little bit. Federer, Rafa, Djokovic, and the lower level players or people who aren't as mentally strong, they go off and they might not ever come back, And you got to understand, you got 20 seconds to flip it in your mind that it happened 20 years ago. So you get up there to serve or return, you got to feel great about yourself. You got to feel positive. You got to feel like you can do anything. Because let's face it, so much of this, no matter what level, is mental. There's mental. That's why everybody plays better against better players. Because when you hit the ball in the net against a better player, it feels a certain way. But if you hit the ball in the net against a hamburger who you've beaten every time, it feels different. But the last time I checked, it went into the net. So a mistake's a mistake. So the mental part, and that's what is so amazing. And one of the best role models for everybody nowadays is Sophia Kenin, who I taught from age 5 to 12. And I came right out of the box saying she's the scariest little creature. A lot of this stuff was baked in. And, I knew what was going to happen, but she was always little. So at the end of the day, she's the best role model for every level because her attitude, it's all about the competition. She gets mad, but that mad makes her more determined. And that's an amazing quality. You can't buy it at Walgreens. Okay, you can't cook it, in the oven. It's something that you acquire over time, and it's a habit. But the problem is most people are mentally so weak, they let the situation control them instead of them controlling the situation.
Love it, Rick. And that's great that you mentioned Sophia, because I was talking with Paul Annacone a couple days ago, and I was asking him about, how can we deal with players, when we're facing somebody who has been in that situation of a Grand Slam final many times, previously, versus you getting there for the first time and then still being able to overcome, that pressure. So give us a little insight into exactly how a player like Sofia was able to defeat somebody who's been there way more times and had way more experience in those situations.
A great question, and I've had this discussion with the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Forbes, when she was doing the Australian. I probably did like 30 interviews. Even though her dad coaches her, does an amazing job. They have a great relationship. This started early on, and it was a gift, okay? I could see mentally this kid's very different, okay? Forget cutting the court and the geometry of the court and taking the ball off the rise. Mentally, it was already baked in. And I've had other people like that. Roddick was unique, Sharapova, everybody. That's the one common thread of all these great players I've had. Mentally, they kind of had it. You usually acquire that later. Like I felt Serena got that later on as a junior. But with Kenin, the first time she plays in the finals, you got to understand, I think we should back the truck up a little bit when she played Barty. Australian Open, Barty's home turf. Everybody probably wanted Barty to win, except Sofia's dad and maybe the people from Fila. So, and she flips it all around and takes it to her advantage. And you can tell people this, and you can be satisfied, hey, you did great or whatever. She expected to win, not hope to win. She expected to win. And then when she got to the finals, okay, against Muguruza, she expected to win. But that doesn't, everybody hopes to win. She expected to win, or she thought she was going to win. She was supposed to win in her own mind. But this starts long ago. Sure, you might be able to, get lucky and pull it off your first time there. But look how she competed. It was like she was oblivious to the pressure. And this is what I talked about when she was 5, 6, and 7. I could see it then. And I said she'd be top 10 in the world by 20 and win many Grand Slams. I think she can win 12. I'm serious. Mentally, she's not going away. She's like a mosquito, your worst nightmare. And because she has other attributes too. She cuts the court, the geometry of the court. She's a wizard. She's like Hingis in many ways, except even better in some areas, I feel. But she is probably one of the best competitors I've ever taught. But she was like that at a young age. How you get it, how much of it has to do with environmental, Russian, who knows? I just saw something unique at a young age. So you got to remember, this was always there at 12, 14, 16 when she was one of the best juniors, except she was a peanut. She was little. So how you do that? Listen, she could have went away. You make errors. People are against you. You think you're blowing it. She's human. But look how she handles pressure. When she loses, she gets more determined. And you could see it by throwing down the ball. She's just so competitive. And when you have that crazy thirst for competition, like no other, you handle pressure amazing. And right now she's 4 in the world and the number 1 ranked American, and no one's more proud of her than Rick Macy. And she actually trains at the academy with her dad and a hitting partner.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'm sure you're just so proud.
Great kid.
Yeah, so good for the country too. I think a lot of people just from listening to you talk, even for those couple minutes, are really inspired. And a lot of them probably say to themselves, you know what, I don't have this sort of, ability at the moment to expect that that I'm going to win every time, but I want to start to develop it and work on it. Now I'm really motivated to do this. So what advice would you have for us who want to gradually get to that point where we're expecting to win most, if not all, of our matches?
Great question. And it's the hardest thing to do. And there's actually a whole chapter in my book, Macy Magic, where I called Flip It. And, greatness, it doesn't matter. LeBron, Jordan, Kobe, it doesn't matter. They have the ability to flip things. They turn pressure into their best friend. If everybody's booing them, they can, they don't take it for what it is. It's not black and white. If it's left, it's right. If it's black, it's white. They think the exact opposite. If it's really, really hot outside, if you think it's hot, it just got hotter. If it's really, really windy and you think it's windy, you probably think it's a hurricane. You got to love the wind. The wind's your best friend. So at the end of the day, it takes a strong individual to be able to flip things in their mind. And so you got to start somewhere, because most people in life, forget tennis, they let things control them instead of you controlling the situation. And in tennis, where you don't have anybody to blame, you don't have a partner, you don't have teammates, it's like you boxing, you know what I mean? And so you mentally have to be so strong. So the first thing you got to do is understand it's a choice. The next thing, it's a challenge. And then you got to be able to flip it in your mind. If you hit 3 double faults in a row, I don't think you're thinking, man, oh man, my serve is great. You're going to think the sky is falling and I did better yesterday. But most people are going to think, what's the matter with my serve? Or if you get ace 3 times in a row, I don't think you go over to the ad court and go, okay, I got him now. You're going to be feeling like, the guy's Superman. But this is what I mean by flipping it. Because the last time I checked, no matter what level you play at, it's 1 point at a time. And it's mind control. I'm telling you, it's mind control. And the best of the best, this is what they do. They're playing a game within a game within a game. So the club player, that's why so many times you see people, club players, even juniors, are going, wait a minute, I have a better forehand, I have a better backhand, I have a better serve, and I just saw 6-2, 6-2. How has that happened? Well, the other guy's always set, getting the ball back. He's running, sweating, shutting his mouth, and just competing. And that trumps the other stuff to some degree. Now, at the highest level, you need a package. But my advice to anybody is get a better attitude, be positive. Even if you're down 6-0, 5-0, can you be Mr. Positive? Yes. But most people say no. Most people say, well, I have a great attitude when I'm winning. Well, come on. Everybody's happy on their birthday. I want you to be happy when things are going against you. And if you can look at it like that, and that's what I call flip it, you got to look at things the exact opposite. But if players would listen to that advice, game changer.
Awesome, Rick. Love it. It's amazing stuff. What types of things can we do to actually, drills, exercises, or anything like that we can do to also further build our just mental toughness and help us realize that we can overcome tough things that are presented to us?
Another great question. The problem is people, they'd rather physically do things. The best thing you got to do is visualize. Okay, the best of the best, they have amazing imaginations. Okay, but no one likes to do this stuff because it's boring. But you got a lot of time right now. So why don't we just take, 45 minutes a day and visualize. See yourself hitting great shots. See yourself hitting 20-ball rallies cross court. See yourself hitting aces. Add color. Add the crowd. Make it real in your mind. Because when you put it into the subconscious, it's amazing how you learn. And I know people think that's all hocus pocus. It's not. The best point guards in basketball, they love to trick you. Okay, all these people that do great things, their imagination's unreal. And so that's one thing that I tell a lot of my students. Plus, if you can slow it down in your mind, or you've been there, done that, when you actually get to that place in a match, your mind will feel comfortable because you've already been there. A perfect example, and I'll use this as that's happened a long time ago. Venus was playing Spurleia. People might not remember the famous bump incident. When Venus first made her debut, I think at the Open, she played Spurleia, and it was 6-all in the breaker, and Venus went 8 feet off the court on center court and hit the most amazing two-handed angle cross court when Spurleia's at the net. Then the next point, I think Spurleia double faulted, and Venus wins, the tiebreaker third. And the interview, they go, that was an amazing shot. You were 8 feet off the court in the tiebreaker. How did you hit that shot from so far off the court? She goes, well, ever since I was little, I was taught to run for every ball, and I've been in that place many times. Think about it. At your normal tennis court, you're about at the side fence. So the fact that she's been there, even though it's a physical thing, because I tell all the kids to run for every ball, she was been there and done that. So when she was there, that moment in time, it brought back to a place she's been at. But if you've never been there, like trying to drive somewhere, you're not going to be as comfortable. And I used to tell all the kids, listen, someday you're going to be in this position. So practice it in your mind, or practice on the court. Even if you're 5 feet off the court, practice hitting shots from there. Because someday, somewhere, somebody is going to hit the ball there. And when you're there, I'm not saying you're going to make it, but you'll be more comfortable.
Excellent, Rick. Appreciate that. And so, in order to help us, I mean, obviously, it helps a lot to surround ourselves with great people, great coaches like yourself. So, what advice do you have for players, competitive amateur tennis players, mainly on how to find somebody, and also what types of people we should find to help surround ourselves with greatness and with that attitude to be able to develop it in ourselves?
A lot of great questions today. No, I think it depends on what you need. Do you need technical help? That becomes a slippery slope because everything is in the eye of the beholder. When I did the ATP forehand, little did I think it'd have over 2 million views on YouTube when I did that with USPTA, but it was cutting edge. And I really broke it down, and it was free, and it helped so many people. And I think it kind of set a new template for people to teach tennis, or at least be aware, like, hey, bro, the game is a lot faster than 10 years ago. This is what the pros are doing, but we're not teaching it. And I'm not saying there's one way, that there's one size that fits all. But I think, that has made a big impact with all the research I've done and sports science guys I work with, that's helped a lot of people from a technical point of view. The game is different, and there has to be a different way to teach it, especially on the men's side. So if you need technical help, I think the more stuff you can study and the more people that you can ask about that. But if people are teaching you how to hit the ball, how they did when they were taught, that's not good. This is a different sport. This is pinball on steroids, and movement is a premium. And there's adaptations on the forehand and backhand like no other. Open stances are at a premium, preparation's a premium, and the racket's staying on the hitting side of the body a lot more than before. That doesn't mean if the ball comes slow, you can take your racket back to California and still deliver the goods. But there's a better way. And you should be trying to imitate the pros, okay, of how they do their technique. That's number one. Number two, the grips. The grip orientates the racket face. So maybe your grip is holding your back. So that might be something worth. But if you don't want to change anything, which some people say, I want to improve, I want to get better, but I don't want to listen to anybody and improve. So I never could figure that one out. You get what you deserve. But strategically, if you don't want to change anything, you could still do better with the goods that you got. So I think going to people, I think going to multiple people and hearing it a different way. Maybe how someone explains it. When I communicate with people, obviously I've done this as much, if not more than anybody. I've been on the tennis court my whole life, since I was 22 years old teaching. And I've learned from the students. I've learned from the players. I learn every day. And I try to get better tomorrow than I did today. I learned a lot today in the 4 lessons I taught. So, to be around people that ask your opinion, what do you think? What's your opinion? How did you feel? Instead of someone that's just dictating to you, here's what to do. And I've never been that way. I communicate with the kids or the players, with adults. I do reconstructive surgery on 80-year-old guys. They freak out. But I talk to them because you don't know what they're really feeling. You might think you do. So I think you need someone who's going to ask you and get your opinion. And I think the more people you can get information from, who knows, it might really resonate with you and change the landscape of your game.
All right, this next clip is with Coach Greg Lesueur from Online Tennis Instruction. I've had Greg on my summit for a couple years now, and he has been a great player as well as a really great instructor. I've just really particularly enjoyed his coaching style and how he approaches the game. And I think you will enjoy this clip as well with Greg. So, and it's going to be on volley and serve technique. So without further ado, here's my interview, or at least part of it, with Greg Lesueur.
As far as volleys, I want to ask you, Greg, of course, like volleys are feared by a lot of people. We're afraid of going to the net or getting hit by the ball. So I'm curious, I was too. Sometimes I am. It depends who I play. I'm sure if I played.
Not that hard. Come on.
Yeah. I'm going to get those huge 300 square inch rackets to protect myself. But in all your years of coaching and, playing, obviously, what is maybe one main problem area that you see in that players have with the volley?
Yeah, Mehrban, I think the number one thing I see is players swing too much. They do way too much with the swing on the volley. And, it stems from, I think, from one of two things. I know for myself, I didn't really understand that there was much of a difference between a ground stroke and a volley. So you have two distinct swing patterns. Your ground strokes are more of a circular lifting motion, where volleys are more of a pushing linear motion. And, I had the privilege to actually hire Raven Klaassen as my coach when I was playing after college and playing on futures. And when we worked on my volleys, he said, "Greg, you're swinging way too much, my friend. Shorten things up." And just, he said, just think of it as a pushing motion and try to flatten it out. So, I learned quickly that I didn't have to swing that much because I was getting the pace from my opponent. But also, most people will kind of step too early, or if at all. So they've lost body momentum. So when you're volleying, there are two sources of power. It's the power from the incoming ball from your opponent, but also the power of your body momentum through the shot. So if you step too early, you've lost one of those power sources. So then you have to make up for it, and that's where people end up taking too big a swing. So, those are kind of the two things I see, which are kind of interrelated. Understanding that it's different to a ground stroke. It's a completely different sensation through your handed contact. And you want to do less and do more with your legs. Yeah, use your body momentum. And if volleyers love pace, because if you volley effectively, you're just reflecting the pace back to your opponent.
Awesome. How do you get that step timing? Because I've also experienced that myself, where you incorrectly step at the wrong time and you're using more of your arms now instead of the momentum. So what types of drills or things should we be doing to practice that?
Yes, I think the first thing is to make sure you have a compact take back, because if your take back's too far back, your arms are always going to lag your feet. So I kind of would tell from a technical standpoint, you want the hand to stay in front of your shoulder. So even if you turn, that's okay, but you don't want it to go beyond your shoulder. And it's interesting. I worked for a guy, Steve Smith, who spent a lot of time with and really helped me to become a tennis teacher. And he'd always say, you cut your own hair, getting back to our haircuts. Yeah. There you go. Because what happens is when you lose the visual acuity of your hand or racket, you don't really know where in space it is. So now I don't know if my hand's here or if it's way back there. So something that I often tell players is that when you set up for your volley, try to see the tip of your racket out of the corner of your eye. So if I'm looking at the ball coming in, out of the corner of my eye, I'm seeing the tip of the racket. And I want to try and keep it there at all times. Now, it is an over-exaggeration, but anytime you make technical changes, you have to over-exaggerate the movement. So that's number one, is making sure you're not taking a massive take back. And then what I find helps is to delay the inside leg stepping through. It's almost like you're going to the ball first with the swing, or with the hand. So you're going towards it. It's like you're falling into the court. So you're going to contact the ball, then the foot will follow. And then that helps you to get the timing. So it's thinking about going with the hands first and then let the foot follow.
That's very interesting because it seems like with other strokes, like with the serve and ground strokes, and you can correct me if I am thinking about this incorrectly, but it seems like you're kind of leading with your lower body. But in this case, I definitely see how leading with the upper allows for the weight shift. Yeah,
actually, you're 100% right, because your power always comes from the ground up, so you're actually pushing with your outside leg. So if these are my feet and I'm hitting a forehand, I'm mirrored. It's kind of weird. This is not going to go so well.
Okay.
So basically, so if you're right-handed on your forehand volley, you're getting your right leg behind the ball. And then you're going to actually push with that right leg, which will then get your body moving forward with the swing. And you're just going to let the left leg lag a little bit, and that will help you with the timing.
Gotcha. Cool, Greg. Cool. Thanks for that tip there. And I'm hearing some rain. It could thunderstorm. So clearly I picked a great time for the stream. No, but I think we'll be fine. I've got strong internet. Thanks, Verizon. They're not sponsoring the show.
As long as we don't have Florida lightning here.
Oh gosh, yeah, that's even worse, I think. So we did get a question on Facebook from Paul, and he, it's kind of a, maybe a basic one, but still very important. How important, in your opinion, is the split step? Because he's even heard from certain people that it's not really that vital. So I was wondering, your thoughts on the split step.
I think there's different times, and we're talking about split step when you're transitioning to the net and then when you're at the net. So I think they're two different things.
Yeah.
And when you're transitioning to the net, funny enough, I was very fortunate to attend one of Vic Braden's last tennis universities, and he was just so amazing. At 8 years old, he was still learning and still following the game. And improving as he went along. And he said one of the biggest mistakes he made was to teach people to split step when they didn't need to. So in other words, if you're coming in from the baseline, let's say the situation where you're forced to the open court, your opponent's stretched, and you just want to get as close to the net as you can. In that situation, you don't really need a split because the ball's floating. You're not going to fall over if you change the direction. You can actually just run and then just change the direction towards the ball. So in that situation, you don't actually have to split because you lose time going forward. Now, the other time you're going to do a different split is if you are serving and volleying, or you're hitting an approach shot and you're taking what I call a transition split, where it's more these stutter steps. So you're not just kind of splitting like this, you're kind of stuttering, and that's allowing you to kind of gain your balance and then move in the direction of the ball. Now, when you establish your position up at the net, and ideally you want to be around about midway between the net and the service line. I'm probably half a step back from there. And I call that a neutral position, because from that position, you can go close to the net to offense to finish, or you can go back to the service line to defense to hit overheads, to cover lobs. But in a neutral position, you're generally going to split. And the split step, the timing is a little bit different, where on a ground stroke, you're going to be at the height of your split when your opponent's hitting, where on a volley, you're going to be on your way down, you may even be touching. Now, why that's vital is when you split step, you are pre-stretching the muscles in your calves and your Achilles tendon. So now it becomes like an elastic band. So, as soon as you land, it's like you're landing, but you're immediately able to take off. But if you're starting in like a static position, now you got to recruit muscle to now make that move. So from that understanding the science, I would say, the split step most of the time is important. But I will say, just thinking back to when I'm playing, and I'm a net junkie. I like to be up at the net. If somebody's setting up, with a big forehand or an overhead, I find that then I'm actually a little bit grounded. I'm just looking to react. I have my racket out here, and I'm probably not making a split. I'm just trying to react. So again, it's just different scenarios. I think that's one thing with tennis. We get all these discussions about stances and this and that, and I think you've got to play all kinds of stances, and it all just depends on the situation and the position you're in. So again, it comes back to the split step. The times you definitely want to split, times you don't want to split, times you want to do the transition, and other times you got to hold to try to just kind of react and you rely on your reflexes.
Love it. Appreciate that, Greg. Great information as always. So in regards to the grip, of course, we've all heard continental. Is there a range of grips that are acceptable for volleys? And you can also answer this in the inverse, which is what grips should we not be using? So either way.
Yeah, this could be an interesting topic here. I think there's two schools of thought in coaching. You have the one grip system, continental, and then you have the minority, which is like a two grip system where you make a slight change from forehand to backhand. Now, I'm in the second camp. I never used to be, but I had some really reputable players who actually make grip changes, and they playing on the tour and doing very well. And the reason it comes, and I'll give different options, but the reason you got to be careful of just one grip is when
I'll get you in here.
You get me in here. Sorry.
There we go.
So when you hold a continental grip on the forehand side, those strings actually point 45 degrees away from your target. So if you're like Johnny Mack and you're able to lay your wrist back and maybe contact the ball a little bit later, now you can square your racket out. So now your strings go to your target, all right? Now, if you're not able to make the adjustment, then you may need to make a slight change to like a 2.5. Like, this is the top panel here. It's kind of like that ridge between grip 1 and grip 2. So you would kind of be, grip 2 and 3. I'm mixed up with the camera here. Right. So you're going to be like a 2.5. It was called an Australian grip. Because back in the day, the Aussies in the 60s, 70s called it a hybrid. But then that's not very good for a backhand volley because, again, the strings are going to point the wrong way and you're going to put yourself in a very weak wrist position. Mm-hmm. So then you want to be close to that grip 2. So you can see it can be a very minimal change. But again, if you can be on 2 and just make an adjustment with your wrist, then you can get away with 1 grip. And that's what I did when I played. When it comes down to the Continental, it's very interesting because before I got involved with OTI, I was primarily working with juniors and going to tournaments almost every weekend. And it was interesting to see most players, they had 1 grip, but they weren't on a Continental. They were actually on a 2.5, like this. So they all had really good forehand volleys, but the backhand volley was really weak. So, I think it's interesting. A lot of people think they have a Continental, but a lot of times they're favoring a forehand. Now the backhand will suffer. So the last thing about grips is that every time you change bevels, it changes the angle of the racket face by 45 degrees. Every bevel, the 8 bevels. So it's massive. So, things you should avoid, I would say, volleying with your ground stroke grips, where you're on a strong 3, grip 4. We actually do see that. So that's things you should try to avoid. But for our listeners out there, find a grip that, if you prefer 1 grip, try to find a grip that you could be in a strong wrist position on your backhand, which will be a 2. And the forehand, you got to lay your wrist back a little bit, adjust the contact so you can square the racket out to your target. If you're very strong on the forehand, most likely you're going to be weak on the backhand. Then you need to consider possibly making a change from one to the other. And, the argument is that there's not enough time, but, even in the ITF book for coaching, the argument is there is time for it. The problem is that if you don't train for it, you won't have the time. It's a motor program just like anything else. So yeah, it's as I say, it is an interesting topic, and some people are very believe strongly in one or the other. I mean, I certainly see there's room for both. But at the end of the day, you want to try and get the strings going out to your target as much as possible.
Great stuff from Greg Lesueur. And if you want to listen to the entire interview with Greg, you can find that at tennisfiles.com/150. That's 150. And I think you'll really enjoy the full interview with him on volley and serve technique. Okay, this next episode is from a very handsome young chap who loves playing tennis. You might have heard of him, or perhaps you listened to his podcast. His name is Mehrban Aranshad. Yes, that's me. And I'm just, obviously kidding around with all those compliments of myself. I don't do that on a daily basis. Definitely not to myself. But this one is going to be a clip from my episode on the 7 do's and don'ts for doubles players. And I was definitely pleasantly surprised to see that this one also topped the downloads for this year, for 2020. Obviously, you have a decent chance of listening to this in 2021. So yes, this was in 2020, and this was, in fact, episode 160. If you want to check out the full episode of the 7 do's and don'ts for doubles players, but you'll get a few of them in this clip. So without further ado, here is a clip from my episode about the 7 do's and don'ts for doubles players. And I'd like to give you a bit of background on my doubles, and just to kind of show you that you can come from a place of not knowing how to move, what shots to hit, how to anticipate in doubles, to a more improved place with your doubles game. So as a junior, and as with maybe a lot of you, I played mostly singles. By mostly, I mean probably 95%, pretty much exclusively singles tournaments. I remember there was one tournament where One of my friends asked me to play, and then for whatever reason I didn't, and he got really pissed off. But I don't know. That's just kind of a random memory. But it just goes to show you how little I played doubles. And I had, obviously, with not playing much doubles at all, I had no idea about the fundamentals of doubles, how to move, and even how to volley, because I just spent about every minute on the court just hugging the baseline unless I got a short ball. And then once I entered college, where I played for the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, shout out to the Retrievers, it's a Division I school for sports. Unfortunately, their program got cut a few years ago, which is really, really unfortunate. When I got there, then my coach, Keith Purrier, who I actually had on the show, I think it was episode number 2 of the podcast. Just amazing to think about that one, because that was many years ago, and I was way more tentative on that episode than I am now, but great progression. But nonetheless, Coach Purrier opened my eyes into the proper doubles positioning, the movement, and the strategy behind doubles. And although I learned a lot of doubles, I didn't really get to implement it that much, in the sense that I didn't really play a lot of doubles in the lineup. I generally played like number 5 and number 6 singles, occasionally 4 and 3, probably once. But I really did not play much doubles in the actual head-to-head matches. And so I still, at that point, had a long way to go to develop proper doubles strategy. And then after taking a break from tennis for a few years when I went to law school, then I started playing a lot of USTA League tennis, which is a lot of doubles, as you all know. There's many leagues that are exclusively doubles. And then even the seasons where you have a mix, there is more courts of doubles and singles, and then there's a couple exclusive singles leagues throughout the year, but it probably varies depending on where you live. So in any case, I picked up a few more strategies, and forced, obviously, with playing so much more doubles, to really think about my game. And then when I started Tennis Files in about 2015, that's when I got to interview, as you all know, a lot of amazing expert coaches on the subject of doubles. I recently talked to Louis Caillé for Tennis Summit 2020, and he's coached Jamie Murray, his number 1 doubles player, and just so many doubles Grand Slam champions and so forth. And yeah, just a lot of great experts. And that's when I started to develop this deep hunger to learn the top strategies from the best coaches in the world on doubles, of course, and also singles, and just all the different aspects. But I know that a lot of you, whether because it's like me, where I played a lot of singles, pretty much all singles throughout my life, and didn't know much about doubles, or because you haven't had doubles coaching, I know that you want to learn some of the top things that you need to do and not to do on the doubles court. And another thing with private lessons too, in my experience, I found that I really was never taught about doubles strategy. You're taught about mostly single strategy, at least when I was getting coached. And I had great coaches, most of them. But you think about, you get coached on like your technique and strategy about singles sometimes, but not so much doubles. So it's very normal for a lot of players to not really know much about how to play proper doubles. And even when you watch the pro game, there's some differences there that you have to be aware of, and capabilities in your game versus what they're doing and so forth. So in any case, that's why I decided to put together this episode, and it's a natural follow-up to last week's, like I mentioned. And for each one of these points, there is either a mistake that I've made and learned to correct through experience, or something that I've implemented myself and found that's really worked. So I'm very confident in sharing these 7 do's and don'ts with you to help you improve your doubles game. All right, so now we have reached the actual list here with that background. So I'll start it off. Number 1 is do communicate with your partner frequently throughout the match. So a lot of times when I watch doubles matches, I see a severe lack of communication between the doubles partners. And this is usually indicative of a not very successful day on the court. So, I mean, you have to ask yourself, how are you supposed to be able to plan out winning plays and be on the same page during points if you aren't communicating with your partner? And the typical team that I see, they might talk a bit in the beginning, plan out a couple plays, but then once they start losing, they just end up going through the motions, almost like they've given up. And all they're doing is just switching sides and moving up or down, depending on if they're returning or they're at the net. And then they go home and wonder why they lost so badly and how awkward it was on the court with their partner. But successful doubles teams always communicate on the changeovers, and very frequently, with successful teams, often between every single point. And I mean, just think about it. As the server's partner at the net, do I stand a better chance at anticipating my opponent's shot and where to move if I know where my partner is serving the ball, which requires communication? Or will I be better off if it's just a complete surprise as to where my partner is serving? So obviously, you definitely want to communicate with your partner very frequently throughout the match. And speaking of communicating, this leads directly into point number 2. Very good segue, if I do say so myself. Number 2 is do use signals on the serve and also on returns as well, which is a little more advanced, but it's fun as well and can be very useful. So using signals where the net player puts one hand behind his or her back and tells the player where to serve and where the net player will be can make the difference between holding serve and getting broken. And just a quick review of hand signals, because it's very possible that some of you listening or many of you have not used signals before. So the first sign that you give is where to serve the ball. And so you're going to point your index finger or pinky finger to the left or right, depending on what hand you use, to indicate either a wide serve or down the T serve. And you also use your middle finger to indicate a body serve. Warning, just be sure to point that middle finger down to the ground and don't flip it up or your partner will take it the wrong way. And so that's the first sign. And then the second sign is where you yourself as a net player will go or will be. So those signs are: a clenched fist is indicating that you're going to stay where you are. If you spread your hand out, kind of like where you indicate the number 5, then that means you're going to poach. And if you have your index and middle finger pointed down to the ground, which resembles a V, or if you flash your hand repeatedly from a fist to spread out fingers, then that's a fake poach. So obviously, you could use different types of signals for these, but these are the ones that are universally used, at least in the U.S. and I think probably everywhere. So if you are talking to your partner before every single point, you could get away with not using signals. However, I still like to confirm what my partner and I discussed, especially when the point is super important and the match is close. So maybe it's 4-all, it's add out, and you and your partner are talking about a play. It's better to make sure via the signals rather than to risk making a mistake, which I have definitely done before. There's been times where I've called the poach and then maybe I haven't poached, or my partner has called the poach and I'm serving and then I did not move. And then we just get, we get broken because we're both on the same side of the court. That's not very good. So definitely a double check. You talk and then you confirm with signals is definitely quite useful. And then with the return signals, actually, my really good friend, probably my best friend, introduced this to me, which is a little more advanced, like I mentioned, but you should definitely try it out. And what happens here is, let's say if you are returning, then your partner who's at the net is going to give you a signal whether they're going to stay or whether they're going to actually poach off of your return. So let's have the example again where I'm returning, my partner gives me the spread out hand, which indicates that he's going to poach. So then once the opponent serves and then I return, then my net partner waits a bit, and then actually crosses right before the opponent hits the ball. And I also cross as well. So a lot of times the server is just in the mindset of, all right, I'm going to hit the shot after my serve back cross court, obviously, away from the net player. But then meanwhile, the net player actually poaches. And so this actually can get a lot of servers, a lot of teams, because they're not expecting this. And this play is really not used much at all, especially in USA leagues below, I'd say 5-0 level. But 5-0, 5-5, etc., like they're actually using it a good amount. So in sum, using signals are part of communicating with your partner, which is critical, and keeping you both on the same page with the same plan of attack. So number 3, another do use the poach, the I formation, and the Australian formations. Back on Tennis Summit 2020, my friend Ian Westerman from Essential Tennis did a great session on disruptive plays. And the purpose of disruptive plays, as he has said before, is to create chaos and to create uncertainty and doubt in your opponent's minds and disrupt their rhythm. By the way, I actually had Ian on the show, and I'll include a link to his episode. But by using the poach, the I formation, and Australian formations, you're going to be able to pick up much more easily short points by finishing off these points at the net off of returns. And you're also going to produce much more unforced errors. And these plays, just a quick summarization in case you don't know. So poach is to move across the court. You switch sides. The I formation is if you start in the middle of the court, both of you actually. So you're serving by the tee, let's say, and then your partner is in the middle, and then the net player tells the server, or you communicate together which side each of you are going to go. Well, yeah, which side that the net player will go to and which side the server will go to. So with the Australian formation, you have both players on the same side or the same half of the court, and then you'll have one player move to the other side after the serve. And that's usually going to be the server. So let's say that if you are serving to the ad side, then your net player, instead of being on the ad side, is actually on the same half as you, which you're both on the left side. And then after the serve, the server is the one who usually is going to move to that to the right, into the right half of the court. But sometimes you can actually reverse this and then have the net player go back to what would be the original position on that ad side, which is more of a kind of a tricky play that could work really well too. And so one story that I have about how using the poach I formation, Australian formations, can really impact your success on the court is that I had a USCA combo league match several months ago, because obviously, there's not as much going on now. But what happened was we were not doing so hot in the beginning as far as holding serve, but then we implemented a combination of these 3 plays here, and then we started to pick up steam. And then fast forward to the third set tiebreak, where it is actually 8-7 us, and my partner is serving, and then I decide to call I formations on both of these points, whereby I would be actually moving to the side that the opponent would normally return cross court. And by doing this, and by also realizing kind of the situation and that the player would try to kind of hit the more standard return because it was a kind of a tight time, obviously being 8-7 in the third set tiebreak, I was actually able to pick off both of those returns to seal the match. So if in that case I would have had a regular formation, then obviously it would have been more of a long drawn out point potentially. And by using kind of your brain, not kind of, and using these plays, you have the potential to create a lot of confusion and unforced errors and pick off a lot of shots and kind of reduce your efforts and making points more efficient. So I really love using the poach eye formation and Australian formations. I hope you enjoyed those doubles tips there. And again, if you want to check out the full episode, it's a very popular one. You can go to tennisfiles.com/160. Obviously, numbers not spelled out. Just random jokes to myself and to you. So this next clip comes from my interview with Coach Jorge Capistani. He is an excellent coach who is actually one of only, I think, 11 people worldwide that has earned the distinction of Master Professional with the USPTA and International Master Professional with the PTR. He's also a certified mental toughness specialist through the Human Performance Institute and holds a USTA Sports Science certification. He's also a USPTA Midwest Hall of Famer. And very convenient for us that he has that certification in mental toughness and is, even arguably more importantly, very experienced in coaching players in that aspect, because you're going to learn a lot of great information and actionable information and drills on how to develop mental toughness so that you can play better under pressure, improve your play in the critical moments, and, start faster and even come from behind. So this one is obviously just a decently sized portion from the full interview with Jorge, but it's a great one. So without further ado, here it is. You kind of mentioned how when you first tried to implement what you had learned, in the first few pages, you obviously couldn't do it perfectly. So what is the key to being able to consistently implement? Because, obviously there's a lot of players who maybe they find a great idea, a great concept, and then they try it out and then maybe it doesn't work because they're, a lot of society is into instant gratification and, they want results immediately, and then they stop practicing that. So how do we stick with it?
Yeah, to me, what made me stick with it was all I needed to stick with it was to see just a morsel of improvement. Like if I were just to conceptually go like, yeah, that would help me because I know I'm a maniac of the way I talk to myself. And if I could do that. So I was excited to do it. Now I would try, okay, and maybe I wouldn't do it so well, but I would still say, you know what, even though I stunk at it, I did better today than my normal state of thought. Now, obviously, if I'm playing a match and I'm ahead, I'm not usually angry when I'm ahead. I'm talking these tough matches where I'm losing and that I think I should be winning. If you just isolate those matches, those are the more important ones to kind of do it. So I think the key is understanding. You might even journal this kind of stuff, but just say, my goal in the next month is to have better inner voice, the way I talk to myself, and I'm going to do these 3 or 4 things. And I'm just going to practice them just like my forehand. I wouldn't expect my forehand, a new forehand, for example, to just kill like the first 3 seconds after I try something new. If my coach has changed my grip, my point of contact, and my swing path, I might say, okay, logic tells me I'm in learning mode right now. And then I'm going to do training mode. And then from there, I'll go into competition mode. Same thing with these mental skills. I'm learning how to look at a shot unemotional. And I'm going to probably stink at it because I'm not comfortable with the stuff that I've done. So if you look at it kind of like the same patience level that you would at a shot, I think that's what helps. As a coach, I can get some kids to kind of buy in when I explain it that way. And I tell them up front, I go, look, so now you know what I want you to try. You think you're going to do it perfect? I just asked them, you think you're going to do it perfect? They, probably not. I said, okay. So you'll do it. And I'll say, that was a good one. That was a 9 right there. That was like almost perfect. That was a stinky one, Mehrban. That was a 3, make a fart noise or something. And just kind of like let them know, like, okay, I'm out here battling. I'm trying stuff. But it's really fascinating. I mean, one of the things I was going to tell you, so we talked about this a little bit before. So I have this course for mental toughness. That's my kind of opt-in course that I give free to the world. But before I sent it, I sent out to probably 20,000 followers. I said, what are your struggles when it comes to mental toughness? Well, there's no right answer. I just want to hear from you all personally. And I got a ton of responses, and the four, I'm going to just share these with you because they're kind of cool. I decided to take them all and put them into four kind of big categories. Category one was fear of losing. A lot of people felt like, man, this is my issue. I get nervous and I'm always afraid of losing. So that was one. The second category, which was a surprise to me, was closing out matches. I get ahead and I can't finish anybody. What's wrong with me? I can't finish off sets. I can't finish off matches. If I'm ahead, I always find a way to give up the lead. So that was interesting. The third one was people recognizing that their inner voice was horrible. Like that's, oof, I'm very impatient. I'm mad at myself. Sometimes I make a fool of myself. My inner voice has become my outer voice, and now everybody thinks, oh, yeah, that guy's crazy. And then the fourth one was just dealing with overall choking and nerves. I'm so nervous, like I can't swing normal. Like my swing is actually being changed physically. So those were the four big categories. And as I looked at them, outside of that one about closing sets, I could resonate with, all that stuff. So I'm kind of looking at my thing there. I think when it comes to closing out matches, let's talk a little bit about that one.
Yeah.
I think what tennis players don't recognize or don't appreciate maybe is just how diabolical the scoring system is in our sport. When you play tennis, it's one of the few sports where I'm playing you, Mehrban, and my points are not cumulative. I don't just keep at like baseball, basketball, soccer. Most sports is cumulative. You got one, it's one. You got a second point, it's a second point. But in tennis, I play you. Let's just take the very first game. I play you. I win some points. You win some points. At the end of that game, you win it. All right. So what happens to those 3 points I won? They're flush. They go off my scoreboard. Okay. So that's a thing that a lot of people don't quite get. So what happens is it builds pressure. It's inherently pressure filled because it's frustrating. I'm winning a lot of points. I'm down 4-0. What's going on? How could this Mehrban guy beat me? I'm freaking at 0-4. I'm playing pretty good. This is, and people don't like that feeling, right? So it also is tough because you and I could be playing, maybe we have a really tight set and maybe it's a bit contentious and it goes to 5-5, then it goes to 6-6, and then it's in the breaker. And you and I might have been playing for more than an hour. A lot of energy, a lot of emotional. It's been over an hour. We're hot, we're sweaty. And both of us know that in the next 60 seconds, one of us is going to grab a set and one of us is going to lose the whole freaking hour's worth of effort. It's going back to zero.
Sucks.
So imagine a basketball team playing and you said, okay, guys, the score, here's the deal. Let's stop for a second. It's the third quarter and it's late in the third quarter and the score is 92-88. And here's what we're going to do. We're not going to play for the clock. We're not even going to play fourth quarter. We're going to play up to 100. Okay. And whoever gets to 100 first wins. The other guy, nothing. Okay. So that's a little bit more like what tennis has, right? So what happens is when it's 96, 97, both those teams are like, dude, this is like we're inches away from winning or the whole thing goes to pot. All right. So I think tennis scoring is really tough. It's made for comebacks. It's made to be really difficult to put people away. In ping pong, I used to play a lot of ping pong. If I was playing you, Mehrban, in ping pong, and let's say I'm up 20-5. Okay, so we play the 21, right? That means you are facing literally 15 consecutive sudden death points, right? So there's no way you're going to win. Even if I choke, you're probably not going to pull off 15 in a row, right? But check out tennis. If you go to the tennis version of that, and I'm up 5-0 in the third set, right? I got 5, you got 0. There is no sudden death. I can play a long game. At 5-0, I'm serving 5-0, and I serve, and I play a long game. You win a point, I win a point, you win a point. You are behind 5-0, but you don't have sudden death right away. Okay, so there's some pressure or there's a release of pressure compared to like ping pong scoring. So what happens is we play a long game, and then you win the game. So it's 5-1. No big whoop. Jorge's still happy. You serve. We play another long game. I win some points. You win some points. Back and forth we go. But you win the game. So now it's 5 for Jorge, 2 for Mehrban. And then we keep going. And I play a lot of the next game. great points. I win some, you win some, but you win another game. You see how it's easier to make comebacks in tennis than it is like ping pong? So that in and of itself is brutal. So that when you're up 5-0 in the fifth and the fifth set, it's tough to put people away. It's not so tough to put them away in like a sport where like ping pong, where the scorekeeping is different. So once people kind of get that and they recognize, there's so many things in tennis that people just got to give themselves a break for, like the amount of errors we make. 78%
machines.
Yeah. Sometimes up to 80%. This is the pro level. 80% of the points that on the WTA end in errors. And I got juniors that if they make 50% errors, they're freaking out. Like, they want to shoot somebody. I'm like, you picked the wrong sport if you're a professional. Our game, there's errors in it. Rafa makes errors, unforced as well as forced. So those are kind of fascinating things that I think make tennis awesome and also very frustrating.
For sure, Jorge. And actually, now that we're on the topic of closing out matches, and I agree, it's very tough. I just watched a clip a couple hours ago of a player who was down 5-2 and then won like 15 straight points, and then ended up winning 7-5 from being down 5-2. So it just made me think of that. But what are some tips that you actually have for players who do struggle? They're up in matches and then they end up losing, and this happens consistently. What can they do?
So what I found that most people that struggle from that, at least the people in my orbit that struggle with that, is lack of match play. So they're usually out of balance when you do that audit. And you're like, wow, Mehrban here, you have a lot of privates, a lot of drills, a lot of sparring sessions, not that much competition. So maybe you're a little nervous when you get in there because you're not used to it. Okay, so that's the number one thing. But the other thing you can do is the way you practice, right? So pressure, you actually want to practice in pressure. So we have had this happen to me a lot. A kid will play an upcoming tournament. Maybe it's a qualifier. It's a big tournament. He wants to go to nationals, blah, blah, blah. He knows the date on the calendar a whole year ahead. And he prepares. He trains. And before that match, he thinks he's on track and he's doing everything right. He's taking extra private lessons and extra groups, and I'm running 5 miles. And he's doing everything he thinks is good, but he's not playing. Right. So he gets there and now he's feeling the pressure, and this is a new thing to him. So what I would recommend, what I've had success with, is trying to create pressure in the practice match. So if I play against you, here's the different levels of pressure. I hit with you, Mehrban, and we just spar. It's fun. We're getting a workout. Maybe my timing is better. No pressure. There's not even a scoreboard. Okay. But then we say, okay, here's something a little bit more pressure. Hey, let's play out points. I'll just feed it. Let's just play at the 21 ground stroke points. Not even a serve. We just play out groundies. That's a little bit more pressure because now there's a scoreboard, right? And say, hey, let's serve and play out points. But, I serve 5, you serve 5. Okay, that's a little more pressure because it seems more like a match. And then we say, hey, let's play a set. It won't be in the tournament. It'll just be a practice set. Well, now one of us is going to win, one of us is going to lose. So a little more pressure. All right. And then you say, hey, I'm going to play. You come to my academy and say, Mehrban, I want you to play Peter. Go over there and play. Now other people are going to know about the results. And there's a scoreboard. But it's not official. It's not going to go on USTA. It's not going to affect your UTR or your rating. But it's a match. And so there's going to be a winner and a loser. And then you play a tournament match or a high school match. That is on your record. Okay? That is going to check your ranking. It's going to affect your seedings. It's going to affect your UTR. So now that's right up there. That's where people kind of get the most nervous. Then you have a match that counts for your record, and you're playing a rival, or you're playing a rival school or someone you don't like, and that's even more pressure. So of all those levels of pressure, I think very few people actually get that last one where you can play a bunch of practice sets, and I'm glad you're playing practice sets, but it's not a tournament match. You're not going to create the pressure in a practice match that you would have in a tournament. So here's what I recommend. Let's say I'm coaching you and you're 12 years old, and I decide, okay, everybody here gets nervous, and so I'm going to have you play sets, but instead of just playing regular sets, I'm going to inherently change the rules so it makes pressure go up. So here's a couple of ideas. I'm going to say, okay, Mehrban, you and I are going to play a set. You're going to play whoever. But every game, instead of starting at love, it's going to start at 30-30. So immediately you're right at the business end of the game. You're going to get more of those. That's when people get nervous, right? The end of a set, the end of a game, they just feel different. We know they're only worth one on the scoreboard, but man, well, that's break point 4 or 5. It's 1 point, but it just feels different. Like, oh my gosh, So we put people so they experience that, because by definition, a pressure point, the way I call it, is 30 all in a game or later, or 4-4 in the set or later. So if I played a regular set, the majority of the time is not under pressure points. But if I play you and I say, forget playing sets, let's play for an hour, and here's the rules. Every game starts at 30-30, and every set starts at 4-4. And now you and I go out and do an hour, by definition, almost the entire points. And here's what happens. I'll do that as an assignment, and inevitably one of the kids comes back, oh, so I hate it. That was stupid. I hate it. Well, that's the kid that's probably choking his face off because he can't even deal with it in the practice setting. So you can kind of ramp, you can kind of quick start, if you will, the number of pressure points you play if you play a certain way. There's all kinds of other little games, if I get break point, if I get hull point, if I get game point, if you will, and I don't win game point, and then I lose all my points. That's another game that you play. Kids hate it. But it's tough, because that means, hey, I got to close out. Or you and I can battle, and it's like we're only going to score if we can win 3 in a row. So I'll serve until I win 3 in a row, and then you get to do it. And maybe I can never do it, man. I just can't string points together. So there's all these ways that you can tweak it. A more nasty one, but I actually use it, is I call it ITF sets, where I will say during this set, Mehrban gets 2 bad calls. Okay, you can call it whatever you want, but don't call them at 15 all, Mehrban. Call them at break point and stuff like that. And it's kind of evil, but it's practice. And I tell both kids or adults they can do it, and they do it, and they just freak out. Like, I can't believe it. I go, dude, this is how easy you're flustered. A little rule change that we all know is part of the game, and we're all doing it. We're telling you up ahead that it's going to be a bad call, and you get it. And so a bad call can cost you a point, but your reaction to it can cost you the match. That's right. I've had that happen for sure. Back in the day, I would get a bad call. I'd be so upset that it would cost me, if not the match, at least another couple of games. So I was like so freaked out, like, I can't believe it. It was interesting.
Yeah, that reminded me of actually one of my somebody who played a lot of juniors when I did. I mean, he ended up reaching like the semis of the NCAA singles championship, and then I think he got a couple bad calls against him, and then long story short, he got so pissed off that he actually walked off the court in the semis of the NCAA tournament. So really, obviously there are some people who these, a point or two can really affect them really badly, but that's when you kind of turn to resources like Jorge or the Inner Game of Tennis, or, podcasts that you listen to like this one, perhaps, for mental game advice to help you deal with it. Jorge, how about the opposite? How about when players, they have bad starts, they tend to fall behind very quickly? And I mean, I've actually had this problem before too. What types of advice do you have regarding that? And is that more mental as well, or is that also strategic?
I think it's a little bit of both. So for years, I don't think that I labeled myself a slow starter. Okay. But as a coach and a player, I know people that are slow starters. They notoriously get down early. Okay. And a lot of them feel it that way. So I would say that, yeah, first of all, that exists. There's people who are inclined to have slow starts. But it wasn't until maybe 20 years ago, and I've been teaching 40 years. So it was quite a long time ago that I learned this technique. And I actually learned it from a coach at a conference. And he said, how to survive. He actually asked a question to the audience. He goes, what do you do if you have a student that's a slow starter? How do you help that guy? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm actually wanting to know. Okay. So his idea, I totally swiped it, is this. If you are notorious for a slow start, the number one thing you can do, besides making sure you're properly warmed up physically and all that stuff, is in the beginning, your goal should be to play long points. Long points. If you think about it, if you look at like 10 matches where there were slow starts, Usually, and you look at the slow starter, it's quick errors. They're making errors super early in the point. Misreturn, double fault, misreturn, and they can't even get going. Okay. So the human body will actually get going after it gets 100 or 150 shots. But these guys, they're just shooting themselves in the foot. So that was what he came up with. I go, that's actually pretty ingenious because, even though I wasn't a notorious everyday slow starter, I had moments or certain matches where I had a slow start. And I could think back, I go, that's exactly what happened is I was just missing early. Maybe it was because I was not moving well. Maybe it was because the guy was overpowering me. Maybe it was because my decisions were bad. So now I had to go back and teach that to people, right? So I said to my students, okay, listen, play long point. Well, guess what? That's hard to do. You don't just, they say, Coach Jorge, I want to play long points, but I'm friggin' missing. So, your advice is useless. What do you mean play long points? So here's what I figured out. You play a long point means get some hits in, okay? But you have to do it per person. So for Mehrban, a long point might be pushing, hit loopy balls, just keep it going. Maybe that's your personal
Chip
way.
returns, stuff like that, yeah.
For Jorge, it might be I got to slice everything because I know if I slice, I make it. Okay. And for Peter, it might be, you know what? I just got to hit tons more topspin. That's my mechanism for playing longer points. I had tons of topspin, I had tons of safety. So I'm not going to tell the person which way to do it. I'm just saying you decide. You know your game better than anybody. But you need to play points. Like if someone said to you, if you get 10 balls in, you get $1 billion. What would you do? I mean, and there's the guy right there with the money. I mean, for me, I'd probably slice, to be honest with you. On my backhand, I know I'd slice. On my forehand, I'd probably hit extra topspin. That's the Jorge formula. Okay. But what is it for my wife, Marty? What is it for my daughter? What is it? So once you know what that is, then, and you know you're a slow starter, that's a really helpful formula. That works like 80% of the time that I've explained that to students that haven't tried it because now they're into the point. They've hit 4, 5, 6 shots. 4, 5, 6 shots. It's kind of hard to get down in the dumps that quickly if you're making 4 or 5 shots per point.
Yeah. I mean, it's huge because I was on and I think you might have been too, Jorge. I'm not sure, but a webinar with Craig O'Shaughnessy and our friend Will Hamilton. He showed us a bunch of stats, and one of them was basically that the point ends shots 0 through 4, 0 being a double fault the most. So you get double-digit percentages on those first 4 shots, and so if you're actually able to make all those shots or as much of them as you can, then you are statistically helping yourself by leaps and bounds in winning more points and winning the match.
Great stuff from Coach Jorge Capestany. So this last clip comes from Coach Edgar Giffenig, and this one was a very popular podcast episode. It's episode 164. And by the way, if I didn't mention it for Jorge's episode, that one was episode 161. But for Edgar's episode, you're going to learn about singles strategy, the importance of understanding the dimensions of the court and how to position yourself better. And just generally, a lot of really solid strategies that will help you in your singles matches. Obviously, with us talking about, or me talking about doubles strategies, I thought that including some on singles or some more on singles would be a great idea. So, and Edgar is a very established coach. He is the founder of Giffenig Tennis and is an international consultant for TennisGate. And he was a national coach for the USA, Germany, and Mexico. And he does a ton of speaking throughout the world, and he's been on my tennis summits. And I mean, pretty much all these individuals have been on them, most of them anyway. So, but yeah, I think you're going to really enjoy Edgar's style of coaching and teaching and speaking. So here is a portion of my interview with Edgar from episode 164 of the Tennis Files podcast. Edgar, you talk about the importance of knowing the geometry on the tennis court. And so I would just want to ask you if you could explain a little further, the importance of knowing the geometry of a court and the intricacies involved in that.
Yeah, that's a little bit hard to do just without visuals, but okay, let me see if we can do it. Basically, when you're talking about the geometry of the court, it means understanding the dimensions of the court. Where is the playing field? And where does that put me in relation to the playing field with the net, the sidelines, the baseline? How far can I hit? What happens if I hit cross court? What happens if I hit down the line? So you kind of follow the angles of the shots. And if you study the different possibilities when you're on the court in terms of what the angles of the shot can mean, or where would they take you if the ball is coming from the right hand of the court and they hit an angle, where would I have to run to get it? And what options does the opponent have if they go down the line? How far can they get me off the court? So if you kind of study the court a little bit and understand the geometry, understand how the basics of the court, you're going to come to a few conclusions. And basically what the geometry of the court dictates is, where should I stand to be able to take advantage to be able to cover best the court? That's one thing that the geometry tells you. And basically what it tells you is that for every shot that you hit, you should place yourself in the middle of the best possible shots of your opponent. Okay, so that means if I hit a ball into the corner of the opposite court, let's say if it's a right-handed player I'm playing against, and I hit it to his forehand on the corner over there. So the player has two options. He can either hit a down the line shot right on the line, so parallel. He can hit the ball parallel and hit right on the singles line. That is as far as I would have to move to get that ball. Mm-hmm. Or they can hit cross court, but if they hit cross court, they can actually dissect the sideline and make me run a lot farther. So I'm going to have to stand a little bit, not in the middle of the court, because if I stand in the middle of the court, I'm close to this, to my sideline on my backhand side. That means that the down the line shot, I'm going to be close to that one. But if they hit an angle, I'm going to be pretty far from that shot. So I really should be standing a little bit to the right of the center line. So the geometry of the court basically tells me that the position for the next shot of the opponent, my position should vary depending on my shot. Depending on where I hit the shot, I need to be moving to that position before the opponent hits it in order to be able to hit either shot that he hits. It's like I said, it's a little complicated without the graphics, but I hope people are getting the idea. And it also tells you, okay, how far should I play? Should I play close to the baseline, or should I back up, or should I play inside the court? Well, there's advantage and disadvantage to all of those options. So basically what you want to try to do is gain time from the opponent. That means you're taking time away from the opponent by hitting the ball as close as possible to where it bounces. The closer that I get to the net, the more angles I can hit, the wider my angles are going to be. The further back I play, the harder it is for me to hit an angle and to hit the person off the court. So I want to try to play close to the net to be able to hit angles and make the opponent run wider every time. Of course, in order to hit closer to the bounce, I got to move faster, and I have to keep my ball deep, because if I'm keeping my ball short, the opponent is going to attack me, and I'm going to have to back up to gain time, because if I don't back up, then I'm not going to get the ball. Mm-hmm. So those are the things that the geometry of the court really teaches you. And basically from the way the court is set up with the net and all that, we know that when we're in a defensive position, we have to gain time so that the next shot we have a better chance. So how do I do that? Well, hit the ball high, use different heights. Mm-hmm. Okay. So those are basically some of the things that just understanding the court will teach us tactically. Hit the ball cross court. Why cross court? Because if I hit the ball cross court, I'm in a better position from if I hit the ball cross court and the opponent hits it cross court back to me, I'm already kind of close there. And the farthest I can run is if he hits it down the line. So if he hits it down the line, I'm going to have to run to the line. But here we go again. If I hit it down the line, then the opponent is going to hit cross court. And if the opponent hits cross court, I'm going to have to run much wider because of the angle of his shot. So if we just visualize the court and I hit cross court, just visualize yourself hitting down the line. So you hit down the line and the opponent hits cross court in an angle. So you're going to run and you're going to be in the doubles alley. You're going to hit down the line again. And then the opponent is going to hit cross court again. And then you're going to have to run from the doubles alley to the other doubles alley. Now, let's picture yourself hitting cross court. So if you hit cross court, the best the opponent can do is hit down the line straight to the singles line. So all you have to do is to run to the singles line. And you hit cross court again, and the opponent is going to hit down the line again. So all you have to do is go to the singles line again. So what do you prefer, to run to the doubles alley every time or to run only to the singles line?
Yeah, beautiful point. Just to the singles line, unless, like you said, Edgar, you want to exercise a lot. Then
you want to exercise a lot, keep hitting the ball down the line. No problem.
Yeah, especially with the fitness level, we're not as fit as team, we can't do that all the time. Great stuff there. So you have a section in your new course that is coming up very soon, which I'm excited about, Edgar. The Singles Tactic Masterclass. You have a section on how we beat ourselves, and I was wondering if you could maybe give us one or two of those ways that we actually do end up beating ourselves so that we can know that and then stop doing it.
All right. Well, basically, there's a few things that you can do right away to improve your chances of winning. And the first thing that you need to do is just kind of keep track of what is happening in the match. So you have to ask yourself, am I really getting beat or am I really beating myself? Mm-hmm. A lot of times what happens is we start the match and we're a little bit nervous and we're trying to hit these great shots because we know the opponent is pretty good. And since I'm a little bit nervous, I start making mistakes and then I get a little bit more nervous. And obviously what's going to happen? Well, I'm going to make more mistakes. And then it just keeps going like that. And then suddenly I realize, okay, I already lost the first set and I'm still kind of making mistakes and I'm nervous. I don't know what to do. And I never get out of that situation and I end up losing the match. And the other guy actually didn't do anything. Mm-hmm. I just did everything. So the first thing that you need to do is in the changeover, okay, you know what? I'm making all the mistakes. So let's first get the ball in. So let's get the first serve in. Don't try to kill it. Just get it in. Get the return. Aim it at the middle of the court. Just get that ball in there. Hit every ball cross court. Why cross court? Because I'm hitting over the lower part of the net. I have more area to hit into, and it gets me in a better position. So I'm nervous. Hit cross court. Don't hit down the line. Give yourself good targets. Once I do all that, maybe I'm trying to win and I don't have to do anything else. But let's say, okay, I did all that and I'm still losing. Okay, then I need to start thinking, okay, well, maybe let's see if I can attack a little bit more, change it here, change it there. But at least I set a base. You have to set a base. You got to make sure that, okay, I'm setting a base. I'm giving myself a chance. The opponent is still beating me. So, okay, let's push it from there. But if you don't set a base, you're giving the match away. The other, there's several other things that are fairly easy for everyone to do. And one of them is what I said before, get the point started. Okay, it doesn't matter if you're returning a lob, but return it. Get it in the court. Make the opponent hit a next shot. Same thing on your serve. A lot of us, even if there might not be a huge difference between the first and the second serve, or maybe if it is, and we're missing the first serve every single time, it might be better just to take a little bit off and just start getting it in. Get your 50% first serves in. Try to shoot for that. Take some pace off, hit the ball with a little bit more spin. One of the big problems that I see at the amateur level is trying to, this idea of a great shot in tennis is a bullet 1 inch over the net. Mm-hmm. The reality is that is a terrible shot because even if it's hard, If it's so low, it is going to be short. The key in tennis is to keep the ball deep. Why? Because you're taking away the chance of the opponent to attack you. So even if it's softer and deeper, it's going to be more effective than really hard and short. Plus, the other thing is, if you're aiming so close to net, you're probably going to be making a lot of mistakes in the net. So one of the first things that I tell all my students is you have to make sure that you're not missing balls in the net. That should be your mantra anytime that you practice. If you're hitting balls in the net, you're not aiming at the right height. You need to be aiming at least 2 nets high, at least. So basically, if you're practicing without thinking about it, you should never be hitting balls in the net. That should be your normal shot. Your normal shot is double net. Most players, the problem is that they see the net and they say, oh, all I have to do is clear that. And so they aim way too close to the net. And they make tons of mistakes into the net. So if you don't take anything away from this podcast, if you only take away one thing, is aim high. Don't make mistakes in the net. That in itself is really going to help your game. Other things, do what you do best. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, there's no rule in tennis that I have to hit a forehand in this situation or a backhand in this situation, or that I have to stay back or I have to go net. You can do whatever you want. So play the odds. If you have a much better forehand than a backhand, try to never hit a backhand.
That's what I do.
Right?
Yeah.
If your ground strokes are terrible, but you're really good at the net, don't stay back a single moment. It doesn't matter. If what you do best is hitting slices, just hit slices the whole time. There is no rule. So do what you do best. Give yourself a chance. And also try to force the opponent to hit the balls they don't like to hit. Mm-hmm. Right? So basically your basic strategy is going to be I'm going to hit the shots that I hit best. And I'm going to force you to hit the ones that you don't like to hit.
That's it.
So those are simple things that are very powerful and that really, really help you win more matches. Understanding the situation. You should always know, okay, am I in a situation to attack? Am I in a neutral position, or am I on defense? Where am I? Because if I'm trying to attack from a defensive situation, I'm going to make a ton of mistakes. I see a lot of players trying to hit bullets from 6 feet behind the baseline. Even if you make it, you're not going to do anything to the opponent. So again, you're risking a lot for a very little payback. Bad gambling in the casino, your money's not going to last that long. Okay, so you got to risk when the payoff is big. Payout is big, then you risk. When is the payout big? Okay, I have a forehand. I'm in a position to attack. The opponent is in trouble. Take a chance.
Yeah. I feel like we should go to the casino sometime together, Edgar. Do pretty well.
All right. And that concludes this episode. Obviously, I'm going to speak for a couple more minutes just to bring us to a close, but I really do hope that you enjoyed these clips from the top episodes of 2020. Obviously, download numbers isn't everything, but these episodes each got several thousands of downloads, and yeah, they were great. And I think there was a lot of valuable information in there. So I hope that, as usual, that I always espouse you to select 1 to 3 things to write down and to work on. Obviously, you can write it down as many as you want, but then pick one or a couple to actually put in your calendar to work on. So there's a lot of great stuff here. Everything from strategy to mental game, technique, all that stuff. So, I mean, if there's, one just overarching lesson that I've learned, I mean, it's arguably a little broad, but it's just to keep learning, every single day to identify, what's working well for you and to keep doing that on the court. And then at the same time, when you find areas that you can improve upon to do that, but then to do it systematically, to actually planning is such a big key that, it's always been, a weakness for me, where, if I don't plan something out properly, then I'm going to end up doing random things and then just thinking about how I should have been more efficient. And so I think, you've got to identify those areas or area that you want to work on and then develop a plan, devise a solid plan. That's something that James Blake said to me when I previously interviewed him, which I've interviewed him twice at this point, and he said that he never really felt nerves because he always was prepared. He always had a game plan. So that is just so important to identify what you need to work on, devise a plan, and then obviously equally or even most importantly is to take action on your plan. And there's a lot of distractions out there, our phones and our minds and bodies just naturally wanting to seek comfort, but we've got to push past it and just stick with the process, keep the process in focus rather than the outcome at the end, and celebrate small gains. So actually that turned into a few different lessons, but I think that those are also very valuable tips that when I'm able to implement them, then I tend to accomplish things. And I'm actually already prepping for Tennis Summit 2021. I feel like I just ended, the last one not too long ago, but here we are again. I like to start early, so that's going to be in mid or late mid, I don't know what you want to call it, of April. So that's going to be very exciting. And we had 14,000 people attend last year, which is just mind blowing. So we're going to do our best. I'm going to try to improve every single year, not only in my tennis game and in the podcast and whatnot, but also with the summit. So anyways, I really hope you enjoyed this episode, and I really would appreciate it if you would leave a review for the Tennis Files podcast. Obviously, I'm putting a lot of hours into these episodes, but I enjoy it because it is tennis, and I'm really happy to hear how much it helps you, and I'd love to hear about it in the form of a review. On Apple Podcasts would be a great place to review the podcast. But if for whatever reason you don't have access to that, you can leave a review on your podcast app of choice. You can go to tennisfiles.com/Apple Podcasts for that particular platform to leave a review. Thanks a lot. And I still, even though this was a humongo episode, I'd like to leave you with a quote, as I often love to do at the end of the show. And this one is by Billy Bowerman. And Billy said, "Victory is in having done your best. If you've done your best, you've won." Very true. Just nose to the ground. I don't know if that's the right expression, but just again, focus on the process and on what will give you the best chance of success, and to just keep following that process. And, a lot of times you're not going to win right away, but if you keep doing it, then you're going to have massive gains as a result, and then you will succeed and you'll have achieved your maximal potential, and that's all we can really ask for. Alrighty then, in the words of Jim Carrey. I hope that you all have had a great day, and obviously we look forward to 2021. 2020 was very tough for a myriad of different reasons, but we've got to keep looking forward and keep thinking of what we can do to better ourselves in our tennis games. And, we're not going to be spoon-fed a great life. We've got to make it for ourselves. And the same goes for our tennis games. We've got to really work hard and push past, the seeking comfort into seeking success. So, all right, that's it from me. And thanks so much for listening. And you are amazing, especially if you listen this far. So kudos to you. Have a great day, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Tennis Files podcast. This is Mehrban signing out for 2020.